You want me to put that on my Tudor?
Colonel slams Harry. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Harry has found himself being criticised again. This time the criticism has come from Colonel Richard Kemp, CBE. He's a retired British Army officer who served from 1977 to 2006. It's worthwhile learning a little bit about Colonel Kemp to understand his credentials with regard to what he had to say about Harry. Kemp trained as an infantry soldier in 1977 at Bassingbourn Barracks in Cambridgeshire. He then attended the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst and was commissioned as second lieutenant on the general list on the 5th of August 1978, so he went to Sandhurst like Harry did. He was posted back to the Royal Anglican Regiment in 1979 and was appointed as a platoon commander with the 3rd Battalion based in Palace Barracks in Belfast. During his military career, Kemp completed 7 deployments on Operation Banner in Northern Ireland. He became a lieutenant in 1980 and a captain in 1985. He was then a training instructor before posting to the 2nd Battalion, the second in command of a company, Milan Platoon Commander, and then Battle Group Operations Officer, serving in several locations across the world, including a tour in Cyprus. As a captain in the Royal Anglican Regiment, he took part in the First Gulf War in 1990 to 1991, and then was promoted to the rank of Major in 1991. Following tours with the 7th Armoured Brigade and in headquarters Northern Ireland, he returned to the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Anglican Regiment as Point Company Commander, leading the company in Bosnia, Germany and Canada. He was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in 1997 and commanded the 1st Battalion of the Royal Anglican Regiment in Oakington and Derry from 1998 to 2000. After this command, he was appointed Commander of the Operational Training and Advisory Group and then spent 6 months as Counter-Terrorism and Security Advisor to the Government of Macedonia. He was attached to the Cabinet Office from 2001 to 2006, during which time he was briefly commander of Operation Fingal in Afghanistan, with approximately 300 soldiers under his command. At the Cabinet Office, he worked with the Joint Intelligence Committee and the National Crisis Management Group COBRA. And he did so during the period of the 2005 London bombings and a series of kidnappings of British nationals in Iraq and Afghanistan. He was promoted to the rank of Colonel on 30th of June 2004 and retired from the Army on the 30th of March 2006. Accordingly, a long career in the Army, rising to the rank of Colonel. So he knows a bit of what goes on, I think it would be fair to say. And he's recently appeared in a video, which many have watched, on Piers Morgan Uncensored, where he made some observations about Harry's recent conduct. Colonel Kemp commences by explaining that Prince Harry has enjoyed popularity in the armed forces, enormous popularity, and that was based primarily on 2 things. First of all, his willingness to serve in Afghanistan on 2 tours, and the fact that he's brought help to injured soldiers, primarily through Invictus. However, he then went on to explain that Prince Harry has largely blown all of that away, owing to his attacks on the royal family, which is something that does not go down well with the armed forces because of the loyalty and affection that they have to the royal family, and furthermore, his attempts to exploit his own service for his own game. Accordingly, he has caused his popularity to wane through those actions. Notice, he was once hugely popular, and then it's gone, or has certainly been reduced. And isn't it interesting once again that how did this come about? Attacking his family. Who caused him to do that? His wife. Exploiting his own service for his own gain. Who prompted him to do that? His wife. It shows, of course, that Harry, not exactly the sharpest knife in the knife drawer, and consumed by his own emotional thinking, has been easily manipulated by his wife, but This has then had the consequences as described by Colonel Kemp. He also went on to state, "I would really question what stress he was under during his tenure of service in Afghanistan." He explained that he wasn't interested in rehabilitating Prince Harry's image, and questioned how serious Harry's post-traumatic stress disorder would be after what the Duke of Sussex actually did in Afghanistan. He said, "What Harry was doing was fighting a very, very remote distance, not the kind of thing, in my view, that would result in serious stress and post-traumatic stress disorder." He explained that compared to many other soldiers who lost limbs, had their lives shattered and tragically were killed, then we shouldn't be looking at Harry's image as important. Now, of course, there are those who will say, as indeed the TV critic Nina Miskoff did in the interview alongside Colonel Kemp, stating, well, you can't judge somebody if they found it traumatic, then so be it. But nevertheless, Colonel Kemp makes a valid observation with regard to the comparison, perhaps would be a better description, that there were people who had more traumatic experiences than Harry by virtue of being closer to the action than he did. It could well be, of course, that Colonel Kemp has a healthy dose of cynicism for what Harry says, and that he believes that it's just part of the victim behaviour that Harry has been engaging in since he's been governed and controlled by his wife. He also went on to explain that Harry has said that he was conditioned by the army to regard the Taliban as subhuman. Colonel Kemp says that is simply not the case, and that is not the way that the army causes people to regard other individuals. But he said, of course, Harry writing that in Spare, it played well to the woke crowd. And as a consequence of the fact that he has been pandering to the woke crowd, he sees it as Harry experiencing being treated with greater suspicion and less affection than he once was. Colonel Kemp went on to say that he's not interested in the rehabilitation of Harry's image through Invictus, but rather that it's all about the injured soldiers. Colonel Kemp is naturally entitled to his opinion, and I'd imagine that it's one that is shared by many other individuals. But what it does, in very stark terms, is demonstrate that Harry before was well regarded by the armed forces, and why that was, and then how he's lost that goodwill, how his popularity has dropped, resulting in how there being a suggestion that he can rehabilitate his image through Invictus is something that's being dismissed. The loss of his popularity in standing with the armed forces has coincided with, guess who? The Spider. She came along, told him how it is, he's reacted accordingly, and that's meant that he engaged in attacking his family, which he'd never done before, and that he started making attempts to exploit his own service for his own gain, something which is contrary to the ethos that runs through the armed forces. This means that those in the armed forces, such as Colonel Kemp, have a degree of contempt for the way that Harry has behaved. But it is very clear to those of us who have been observing his interactions that this has been driven by the influence and manipulations of his wife. He didn't do this before, and it is another aspect of what Harry has lost as a consequence of his ensnarement with a narcissist. That his standing has dropped, and that he's now attempting to use the Invictus Games as a vehicle to rehabilitate himself, and it's not being bought by many people who see it as a transparent attempt to use a good cause to make him look better, and they're rejecting that by saying it's about the injured soldiers, not about you, ginger bollocks. But once again, another example of how the conduct and behaviour and manipulations of his wife have impacted upon Harry and caused him to lose popularity and affection from many other people, particularly with regard to those who he once would have had due regard for how they looked upon him. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.